Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Now, as just a bit of cosmic proof that fame, money, and success does not stop you from being a miserable cunt who's constantly feeling bad about yourself, Peter Dinklage has seemingly managed to convince Disney to alter their upcoming Snow White live-action readaptation to remove dwarves. Instead, we're going to have them replaced with unspecified magical creatures. So everyone look forward to, in summer 2024, the live-action adaptation of Snow White and the 7 unspecified magical creatures. I feel like this might just be one of those situations where, as we frequently discuss, the social trends working their way through our particular hobby of tabletop role-playing game and Dungeons and Dragons in particular is, maybe the thing is that the fire's blazing and there's no stopping it at this point. But, maybe if we make it burn hotter and faster, it'll at least be over with faster? I don't know. Now that Disney has done this, then what's to stop the same kind of crowd of people who think along the same lines as Peter Dinklage on this to then go to Amazon and demand that they take the dwarves out of the new Lord of the Rings Ring of Power show? And what's going to stop them from coming to Wizards of the Coast with their hat in hand and making a point of how awful it is that there's dwarves featured so prominently in Dungeons and Dragons? For years already, there's been the periodic raising of the head of the whole dwarf as Jewish stereotype, which D&D has tried to lean away from by making dwarves more of a Viking thing. Honestly, on some level, it is weird that we have this one fantasy race in our mythology that we've have a medical condition that also has the same name. So, it's not like elves are called lepers or tieflings have cerebral palsy or half orcs have Down syndrome. Like, only dwarves share not only a common appearance in some ways because of the traits of being short and stubby, but somehow they are both like their own species, similar to humans, and yet in real life humans can have dwarfism. So how do humans with dwarfism fit into that kind of stuff? Clearly, obviously, in real life and legend, both stories of dwarves and giants probably come from people who had giantism or dwarfism. Once upon a time, a guy with dwarfism was a miner or a blacksmith, and then 3,000 years later, we have the fanciful stories and legends and culture of fantasy dwarves living up in the hills, mining and smelting gold and all that kind of stuff. Same thing. Dude with giantism was a giant asshole, and then some kid threw a rock at him. Now, thousands of years later, we get the David and Goliath story. That kind of a thing. They probably would not have a presence in myth the way they are if they were not, to some degree, drawn from something that was real, and then fictionalized over the centuries since that initial whatever story that led to this trope. So I can see that like some people might think it's strange, especially if you're suffering from that affliction. That a lot of people goof off pretending to be a magical version of you, but with a magic hammer, and then there's obviously all the stuff with Christmas elves and that whole canard. On the other hand, though, this is just part of human cultural mythology. So to the degree that we're gonna just excise it entirely from our storytelling, I'm not really sure who that serves. Is that really going to make anyone happier? In some ways, I guess I kind of have slightly mixed feelings. Although in the end, I saw it on the side of this isn't a necessary change, and it's problematic in its own ways. Notice, okay, so they're going to replace the 7 dwarves in Snow White. they're not replacing them with 7 dudes. It's going to be 7 magical creatures. So I kind of feel like that kind of state in itself kind of states exactly what the function the dwarves were fulfilling in the story. You know, they weren't acting as just people. They are like some sort of beings that lived in the forest that are going to help Snow White out, and all that kind of stuff. You remember Willow? You know, with Warwick Davis and what's his name? Val Kilmer playing Mad Mardigan. I remember directed by Ron Howard, probably one of Ron Howard's better movies, kinda. I remember when I was a kid, I really enjoyed that movie. It was great, nice little fantasy adventure. When you were a kid in the 80s, and Lord of the Rings was something that was just kind of like a ho-hum cartoon, and decades away from the idea that that was ever going to be a movie, Willow was it. It was, you know, that or Kroll. I mean, there wasn't like a whole lot of options for like great sweeping magical fantasy epics back then. And so as a little kid, I really, really loved Willow. And then I remember as an adult in like my late 20s or so, the first time I came across Willow again as an adult and sat down and watched it. And the entire time, my suspension of disbelief was quite shattered by the fact that instead of seeing a race of whimsical little people that Willow was a part of, I'm just sitting here watching a bunch of people with physical maladies being forced to, you know, have a big like party out in the woods and be marching everywhere and be carrying all this heavy equipment and climbing around and doing stunts. And it's not like the Lord of the Rings where they were regular sized people who they were just using forced perspective and a little bit of CGI to make them look like they're smaller than they were. These were people with physical, you know, abnormalities. You know, these people are not in the best of health. It struck me as just really weird, and it kind of put me off out of the movie. I doubt Snow White, the live action, was going to have real life human dwarves. It'd probably be like those Twilight Snow White movies they did a few years ago, where the people, Bob Hoskin, didn't he play a dwarf in that Kristen Stewart Snow White stuff? Like, you know, like casting quote unquote regular people and just reformatting them to look like dwarves, just like they did in Lord of the Rings. But you know, like apparently, like to old Dinklage, that's just not good enough. He still feels, as someone with dwarfism, that whenever he hears some sort of reference to whimsical magical dwarf, that somehow this is a statement against him. And you know, I can't say that that's entirely unreasonable, but like to demand these level of changes is kind of like that's an ask that you alone, you know, have the gravitas to like step in front of the world and tell everyone that they're storytelling wrong. And then that, like, within 24 hours, that Disney actually caved in and announces that they're going to make these sorts of changes to Snow White. I feel like, you know what, yes, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy tabletop yet, but the fact that they caved, well, then what's going to, like, why aren't these other companies going to be, you know, adapting to this demand now? God, you know, we got D&D 5.5, D&D 6, whatever you're going to want to call it, the D&D evolution coming. Are they going to strip dwarves out of that? I mean, consider it. Think about it. It is like, we don't call halflings midgets. You know, you know, I can't. I have in the past thought it's strange, but like I say though, this is like ancient human cultural storytelling. I guess we should just all get used to it, guys. No more dwarves. They're coming for your dwarves. They took our dwarves. Something like that. I don't know. Once again, what are you going to replace it with? Are we going to just rename them? Should Dungeons & Dragons also have a unspecified magical beings to fill in for dwarves there? Should we just switch to calling him Duergar? You know, a dwarf by any other name. Eventually, are we going to come for gnomes? Or halflings? Or putting half in front of various kinds of creatures that have mixed with humans? Yeah. Oh, well. Welcome to this world that we now live in. Leave comments below. Be sure they are... you know, like not implying that people with actual physical maladies and deformations, you know, have any sort of magical abilities. Thank God there's no unicorn disease. Well, anyway, stay waspinated.